Sixers win in a Joel Embiid-less game last night against Miami. We got a lot of Joel Embiid and the Sixers roster construction to talk about after last night. Chauncey Gardner Johnson tweets, then deletes comments about Jonathon Gannon. You don't like it, or you like it, I don't. We're going to talk about that as well. Trending in the AM. It starts in 30 seconds.
Holding, gets around in front. Joel Embiid,
and Philadelphia has it.
And a very good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications on all social media platforms as we're live on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Just make sure you're sharing it out to everybody. Head over to the DSM Media YouTube page. It's the best place to get interactive with the show. Drop your comments, thoughts, questions, anything you got. You drop it over there, and we'll attack it. We've got Sixers and Eagles on the agenda today. But whatever you want to talk about, you drop them in the comment section there. We will address them, no doubt about it. I am your host, Phil Stifel, at Bearded Knowledge on Twitter. I'm joined by an under-the-weather Mr. Jason Voorhees, who, is going to do his best to power through today, which I greatly appreciate. Good morning, Jason.
What's going on, man? What's going on?
I'm good. It sounds like you might not be good, though.
Yeah, I got something that's apparently it's going around, some kind of head cold and congestion and all that kind of nonsense. So hopefully I get better soon. But I'm happy to be back. It's been about a week since I've been on a show, and excited to hang out with you today.
All right, so we got lots to talk about today. I want to talk Sixers, obviously. Win last night, blowout win, 119-96 over the Miami Heat. Ending their short little 2-game losing streak there. But I think the conversation there starts and ends with the Joel Embiid situation. And so we're going to get into that. And then obviously I want to talk. I know a lot of people are loving Chauncey Gardner's tweet that was deleted, yesterday morning, I guess it was, when he put it out there. So we're going to get into it because I am 110% against it. And I know a lot of my followers think I'm wrong in that. So we're going to discuss why. Because when you put out a tweet, you don't really get the full story. So I want to make sure I fully explain what I am thinking in that process there. So we're going to talk that as well. And if, you want to talk anything else in the comments, drop them there. I had expected to, maybe I'll save 3 minutes at the end of the show to drop, Andrew Painter's debut in Philly spring training yesterday. I know everybody was really hyped about that. But, I don't know if there'll be time. We'll see. So late yesterday afternoon, early evening, word dropped. Joel Embiid was going to be rested last night. They say sore foot. He does have a bad foot, but basically it was part of that dreaded word, load management, Jason, where you're just protecting and resting the guy. I mean, we got a tough stretch, coming out of the All-Star break, 25 games in 45 days. It's a tough stretch. I wouldn't be surprised if James Harden sits tonight, on a back-to-back night. You got to rest these aging, older stars so that we're ready for the playoffs. You rest Joel Embiid last night. They go small ball. They start all three guards, Maxey, Melton, and Harden. They start P.J. Tucker and Tobias Harris, and they come out and they play well. But before the game, we didn't know they were going to play well. And the conversation circling around Sixers Twitter, Sixers fan base was, again, about the roster construction that this team has. Now, Paul Reed played well last night, but Paul Reed, Montrezl Harrell cannot see the floor. Dwayne Dedmon was your lone, pickup during the, the buyout market. He hasn't seen the floor yet. You got Montrezl Harrell can't see the floor for some reason. Jalen McDaniels, who you picked up in a trade, who could play a small ball center, plays 12 minutes last night. The construction, we've talked about in the past, the evolution of the backup of, Joel Embiid. You had Amir Johnson, you had Al Horford, then you go Dwight Howard, Andre Drummond. It keeps getting better and better. And then you drop off to this year where you can't rest, or when you do rest him, it's everybody's in an uproar because there are no options. It almost felt like going into the game, it was going to be a scheduled loss because Joel Embiid's averaging 38, 40 minutes a game, 40 points a game, playing elite level, and you just don't expect a win like that to come last night. So before we talk about the game, I think it's time to talk again about Daryl Morey and how he has constructed this roster and how he has just, again, proven to disappoint to an extent. Like, you cannot have a team that has title aspirations where your best player, needs to sit 10, 15 times a year to be ready for the playoffs, and you have no option, where you have to play in 40 minutes a game in the middle of a meaningless season because you have no other options. Is this Daryl Morey's fault, Jason, or is it really the players that he brought in that have to step up their game a little bit more?
I mean, in my opinion, I would say it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, I think for what it's worth, Daryl Morey has tried. Unfortunately, I think the problem with the Sixers roster is that it's top heavy.
Mhm.
You know, when they went and got Harden, it basically, you got the Embiid contract, Harden's contract, and then Tobias, and it's like the rest of the guys to fill out the roster. There's not a lot of money there,
Right.
and I'm not making an excuse for the guy, but I think that he has tried. I mean, to me, when they signed Montrezl Harrell, I mean, like I said, I'm not a super knowledgeable in basketball, but I've heard the name. I was
Mhm.
thinking, oh, this guy's is going to be a good pickup, and he can't even see the court. I mean,
That
is
really confuses me. I know that when we had Scotty on a few weeks ago, he's like, "Well, he's playing bad on defense and this and that." And Montrezl Harrell was 2 years ago the sixth man of the year in the NBA. You can't tell me that in a Joel Embiidless game that Montrezl Harrell can't see the court. I mean, he's not what he was 2 or 3 years ago. You're telling me he's not better than what you're running out there. And I know Paul Reed had a huge game last night, but that wasn't the expectations from Sixers fans. I mean, Paul Reed has been god awful dreadful this year. He's regressed, not progressed as a young player. So you're telling me that you can't get 15 minutes for Montrezl Harrell when you have a Joel Embiid less game? You don't want to give him a shot. You're resting Joel last night. You're basically phoning the game in. Why not try to get Montrezl Harrell right? Let him start with the starting lineup. Why don't you let him, do something? I mean, I get what you're saying. He's tried to build the roster, but you know, either Montrezl Harrell is just a complete and total, wash at this point, or maybe there's something to do with Doc Rivers here. And then you go out and you get Dwayne Dedman, who is a veteran center, was on the team in the process years, the beginning of the process years. You go and you spend your money on him instead of the other 5 or 6 other guys that were available. You say you spent all the money, that there is no money available. The little money you had, you go and get a guy that's already injured that you don't know when he's going to come back. That to me is roster construction from Daryl Morey. Overreacting. Oh, Dwayne Dedman, we don't know who else is going to be available. Let's just get him. And now you're wasting that last roster spot on a guy that now, 5 games now, he's just sitting on the bench in street clothes.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like I said, I think he does deserve criticism. I guess what I'm saying is I don't know how many other options there really are when
At
you
this
go
point,
out and get a James Harden. Like when you make that move, it's kind of like an all-in move, and unfortunately, we don't have a lot of younger guys that can fill in, like as far as like at the center position, like. There, obviously last night Paul Reed had a nice game, but like, are we going to get that consistently when Embiid's out?
no, we're not going to get that consistently when Embiid's in from Paul Reed. Paul Reed would be the perfect person to, how do I say this, like be that guy that plays instead of 8 minutes a game, 12 minutes a game, just to cut Joel Embiid's minutes down. It doesn't sound like much cutting 4 minutes from Joel Embiid per game, but over the course of a season, cutting 4 more minutes every game, that's a huge deal on that guy's body and on his knees and his feet and his back and everything. So Paul Reed should be able to step into that role, but he hasn't grown at all. And it brings up the question about Daryl Morey and Doc Rivers, developing talent. I know my man, Mr. Crockpot from the Painted Lines, put out a tweet about how good Charles Bassey, Matisse Thybulle, and Isaiah Joe are doing on their new teams this year. Matisse just recently with Portland, but Bassey, it was either Charles Bassey or Paul Reed was going to stay with the team. The other was going to move on in the offseason. Charles Bassey is flourishing now in his new role, getting regular minutes. I think he actually just got like a 2-year, decent extension. But people saying that you got to realize you couldn't keep all these young guys and try to develop everybody. We're in you just said it. We go out and get James Harden. We're in a win now mode. We're not in a let's see how these guys develop over the next 2-3 years. Maybe they pan out and we've got a great option. Maybe not. But on the flip side, on the criticizing Doc Rivers on development, outside of Tyrese Maxey, he hasn't really been able to develop anybody in his time here. Paul Reed this year, you saw little glimmers last year. You saw a glimmer last night. But there's never been that progression in his ability or his performance on the court to show that he's being developed. So anybody saying, why don't we have Charles Bassey now? Well, Charles Bassey would probably be in the same role that Paul Reed is in right now. Underdeveloped, not putting out those obviously, Charles Bassey's getting big minutes. He's going to get bigger stats on a bad team. But, everybody's saying that he would have done that here. That's not necessarily the case. So I still think that the problems that lie with this team, the problems that are going to keep us from getting to the finals or the conference finals, it lies with Daryl Morey's building of this team, but also Doc Rivers' management and development of this team as well.
Yeah, I think you can look at Doc Rivers, and a lot of people give him, credit as being a guy that has been known to have a propensity to develop players. I mean,
right.
In the same breath, if we're going to say that he hasn't developed guys like Paul Reed and other guys, you got to give him credit for Maxey because,
right.
I mean, now, is it him or is it Harden? Like, did Harden really come in as like a second coach?
And he was developing Maxey, and then Maxey all of a sudden has hit a wall. His development has kind of stalled. So maybe the stall in his, you put him back in the starting lineup last night, which I don't actually, it's crazy. I don't want Maxey coming off the bench, but it clearly shows that Doc Rivers wants him on the bench. But then last night, you put him back in the starting lineup because Joel Embiid's out, just because he's your next best player, instead of continuing to keep him in the role that you're trying to develop him in. There, you just stunted the growth of bench player Tyrese Maxey, which we need for this playoff run we're about to go on. You could have started Jalen McDaniels as your center. You could have started Shake. If you wanted another guard, start Shake Milton. You could have started anybody.
Yeah.
But yet you started Tyrese Maxey, which has completely flipped the script on what you've been teaching him over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
But then again, if you started one of those other guys, do you win the game? I mean, I think Maxey kind of was the best player last night on the court. I mean,
absolutely, no doubt about it. And the Joel Embiid-less factor may have helped Maxey get back in the right aggressive mindset.
Well, you've talked about that.
Yeah, it might have actually helped Paul Reed get back in the right mindset by having that game last night. But going into the game, you didn't. Can any Sixers fan really say going into the game last night, knowing Joel Embiid was going to sit, seeing that starting lineup, could anybody have said that they thought the Sixers were going to win by 20-some points? No.
Well, no, but you've talked about that idea that, sometimes maybe you think that that's something that Maxey still hasn't really figured out, how to play when he's with Embiid. Like, he seems to thrive when Embiid's out of the lineup. I mean, we've seen that last year.
Even in games that Joel plays, when Joel sits on the bench,
yes.
Maxey seems to play his best.
Yes, and I think I remember his rookie year, we saw that a lot too. And so I think maybe there's something to that. Now, like, can eventually they get that figured out? Hopefully. I mean, obviously going into the playoffs, you still want him as the bench role because he's kind of excelled at that lately. But then again, at least you have the ace in your pocket in case Embiid is out to have a guy that can kind of dominate.
Yeah, and again, yeah, and that's fair. And it is weird how still after all this time, Tyrese Maxey at this point, he's not the young star. I mean, he's young. He's only, 21 years old. But, I mean, he's in his third full year. He should have learned how to play opposite or complement Joel Embiid better. And that goes back to the development. We say Doc Rivers has developed Tyrese Maxey. And, yeah, Tyrese Maxey's become a better three-point shooter. When he came into the league out of, was it Duke or Kentucky, no one thought of him as a three-point shooter. He wasn't expected to be this 40% three-point shooter. He was a slasher, dasher, get-to-the-rim kind of guy, the speed and athleticism, but he wasn't a great shooter coming out of college. So Doc Rivers did develop and give him confidence in taking that shot. Maybe, like you said, maybe a little bit of James Harden as well, because you saw a big boost in him after James Harden got here in the confidence level. But he's not a young kid anymore. He's a young kid, but he's not a young NBA player anymore. And he should have the confidence to be able to play with these stars. Now, because to an extent he is a star. He's not an all-star yet. He will be at some point. But he shouldn't have to be scared and defer when Joel's out there because he's good. Last night proves he's good enough. And maybe that's part on Doc Rivers as well.
I mean, you just mentioned the word confidence. I think you nailed it. I think it is a lack of confidence on Max's part.
On your coach to, it's not just a coach developing a player's shot. It's a coach developing a player's confidence as well, right?
I agree with you. So, I mean,
we talk Phillies, Rob Thompson putting confidence in Bryce. Were you going to say the same thing? Bryson Stott last year. You know what I mean? If it wasn't for Rob Thompson, maybe Bryson Stott doesn't take the steps he took last year. It's the same thing.
Absolutely. I mean, Phil, you wanted Doc Rivers gone yesterday. I mean, last year.
Before the season started.
So, unfortunately, it's almost like beating a dead horse. He's still here. So,
but here's the question, though. Yes, I wanted Doc Rivers gone before the season. I wanted him gone in the middle of last season. I have not been a fan of Doc Rivers for a long time. But if you just hypothetically speaking, say they would have fired him in off season, just as an argument's sake, they would have promoted, Matt, why can't I the bench coach? I don't know why I can't think of his name. Sam Cassell. Man, I just had a little brain fart there. Just say everybody's favorite promotion would have been Sam Cassell. Just say they did that. Are we any better right now? Because Daryl Morey still gave the Sixers no backup center. Daryl Morey still gave us Daniel House Jr. as his big free agent in the offseason move, who can't see the court other than last night. And when you do see him on the court, you realize why he's riding the back of the bench. Are we any better? The moves that he made at the deadline and in the buyout market, Daryl Morey, would have probably been the same because we had very little money left. So would a different coach have made this team that much better?
I mean, it's hard to say. I think if you do look at this team, though, I mean, overall, down the stretch, they really, I think this team is set up. They have to win this year. They have to go far because if they don't, you're almost like at the point where do you blow it up? Like, I don't know. Like, you have to have, once again, you have another season of Embiid, knock on wood, for the most part, being healthy. I mean, when is that going to run out? Like, we've been saying every year, like, how long will Embiid last? Like, he's not a guy that you could see lasting 10 years in this league. Like, he's just not because of the way that he plays. But he's dominating. I mean, and James Harden has come back to life. James Harden looks like, I'm not saying he's the James Harden of old, but he looks much better. He looks a lot healthier. He looks, more into it. Mm-hmm. And as you said, Maxey going to that bench role, like, I think they've, once again, obviously you're going to have to go through Boston. You're going to have to go through the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, those two teams I still think are
head and shoulders better.
Better.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I lost you there for a second.
No, it's okay.
They're better. But still, it still comes down to the whole thing about roster construction to me. And I'm looking at last night's lineup: 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You ran 9 guys. So you got 15. You got 15 roster spots in the NBA. Okay, one's by Dwayne Dedmon, wasted spot. One's in Montrezl Harrell. Can't see the floor when you've got your star center. That's 2 wasted spots. Furkan Korkmaz. I don't know the last time Furkan Korkmaz touched a court. Even in practice, who knows? That's 3 wasted roster spots. So now you're down to 12 guys. Okay, you look at the other guys that are around this team. Daniel House Jr. does not provide anything to this team. That's 4. You've got 15 roster spots, and 4 of them at this point are completely wasted. The teams like the Boston Celtics you bring up, or Milwaukee, the Boston Celtics, they've had injuries. The next man up, the next guy on the roster is there and steps up in their place. Milwaukee, anytime Giannis misses time, somebody steps up. They have 3 big money guys in Giannis and Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. Somebody's always there to step up because the roster is built to complement each other. This roster just hasn't been built to complement. And when you have a roster where 4 of your 15 guys are wasted spots, what? How can look? I know somebody, and I'm going to just call one person out. Dylan's going to be like, everybody's overreacting to what's going on with the Sixers, and we won last night, so we should be positive. This team is what it is. They're the third best team in the conference. They're one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the NBA. But the difference between the Bucks and the Celtics and the rest of the NBA is so drastic. The job that was done to build and manage this team did not put you in a position to be able to compete with those two rosters for situations just like this.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct, and we don't match up well against those teams either. It's not even just the roster construction. We don't have guys that match up well against their stars, and it just seems like their stars always come through in those games when we play. I mean, listen, we beat the Celtics, we beat the Bucks, but for the most part, they've had our number, both teams, and
right.
I think that's because, as you said, it's the roster. We don't have guys that complement, and guys that can defend their stars, and that's the major problem.
Yeah,
so
I agree with you 100% on that. So then the question becomes, what do you do with Joel Embiid down the stretch? Obviously they got another game tonight. It's a back-to-back. Last night, Miami. They go right from Miami to Dallas, and I think Scotty tweeted it out or put it in the group chat. Do you rest Joel Embiid again tonight? Because then you have a day off tomorrow, and then you go to Milwaukee on, what's today, Thursday, so Friday off. Saturday, you go to Milwaukee to play the Bucks. Do you just, you realize you got to get him a couple days off here and there. You just rest him 2 nights in a row. I know that's throwing in the towel 2 nights in a row. Do you just rest him again? Or do you play him tonight and then hope he's, okay to play on Saturday night? Or you give him 2 days off, and that turns into 3 days off because of, the day off on Friday, and then maybe he's closer to 100% for the Milwaukee game when you need him to guard Giannis and whatnot. I'm torn because I saw Scotty's comment, and I was like, well, I don't know. Because, again, you're not going to get the performance that you got last night from these back-end guys every single night. And every game at this point is a must-win to an extent. You're going to get the 3rd seed. Maybe you fall to the 4th seed. Maybe you get up to the 2nd seed, doubtful. But you're basically almost already, with 20-some games left, locked into your spot. It's almost like it would take a drastic drop-off or jump to move out of that 3 spot this year. So at that point, do you just continue to maintenance these guys and you just give Joel a day off today again?
I mean, I think you have to look at that because I think ultimately the playoffs are the most important, and Joel's health and being healthy in the playoffs is the most important. So if you're going to look at a regular season game against Milwaukee as being like a stepping stone type game or a game to show if we can match up with them, obviously it's getting closer to playoffs, then fine. Then I would rest him tonight. But if your goal is to, as you said, take it one game at a time and just try to win each game, then no, I think you got to let him play. I mean, unless he is.
You also have to take into account that James Harden needs breaks at some point too, and you can't rest both James and Joel at the same time.
I mean, is he really hurt, or are they just saying he has a sore leg?
Yeah, he's banged up every year. Joel Embiid's banged up, but it's a maintenance rest. It's a load management thing. Last night, it was not because he couldn't dress last night.
Okay.
So he could have dressed last night. He can dress tonight. It's more of a load management, so he's got the legs under him for the playoffs.
I think if you're going to rest anybody, rest Harden tonight.
Yeah. I mean, tonight you're going up against the Dallas Mavericks and the new look Dallas. I'm actually really excited tonight because I've seen highlights, but I haven't seen on the court. I haven't watched a game yet with the new Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving pairing. Kyrie Irving's being on his best behavior so far. I mean, it's been like 3 weeks, but it doesn't take long for Kyrie Irving to do something or say something stupid that, stirs some kind of trouble up. On a side note, I don't know if you saw it, that the Nets are shutting down Ben Simmons for the rest of the year. That Brooklyn team, man. Anybody that says we lost, I don't care what happens. I know there's more rumors floating that James Harden might leave at the end of the season, which I've got a crazy theory about that, and something that could really be in our favor there. But man, that Brooklyn Nets team, man, I'm not trying to say it feels good because I don't wish the struggles that Ben Simmons has on anybody. It's right there with that Carson Wentz, situation. But man, we lucked out getting James Harden because Ben Simmons, man, you've said it before. Guy might not play basketball again after his contract's up.
I don't think he will. I
I don't know. I
honestly,
think he's got one more year on his contract, maybe two, but yeah, that's it for that guy.
I think he's done.
It's crazy, man. That
Carson Wentz.
it's
Wentz.
yeah. I don't know. The Ben Simmons situation might be worse than the Carson Wentz situation because at least Carson Wentz helped lead us to a Super Bowl.
Well, Ben Simmons had more talent, like per se.
Yeah, that's possible.
Ben Simmons, there were people throwing around the term generational talent at one point with Ben Simmons, which shows you that you need to pump the brakes.
But if you go and research Ben Simmons scouting report coming out of college, it said maturity issues. It said if he's not the center of attention, he struggles, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's kind of proven accurate here once he's gotten to the pros.
Absolutely.
Him and Carson. Joe saying we got to finish 3-4 so he can flame out in the second round. Look, to me, it's like we're almost already locked into the 3 spot. The Cavs aren't good enough to catch us. We're not bad enough to fall to the Cavs at 4, but yet I don't think we're good enough to catch the Bucks or the Celtics. So it's almost like we've already locked in the 3 seed, in my opinion. So we played 4 games. So we're down to 21 games left in the season here, guys. So, it's just curious. Again, like I said, I do want to touch on it one more time because we really didn't dive into it too much. That I really think that if you're going to commit to Tyrese Maxey, the bench player, these Joel-less games, you still got to let him come off the bench. You got to let him come off the bench so he just continue. He can still gain that confidence. He can still play 35 minutes. What did he play last night? Let me bring the box score back up. Tyrese Maxey played 38 minutes starting last night. Got back in the positive column, 4-7 from deep. 27.7 assists, 4 rebounds, a steal. He was what he should be. But I would.
I disagree. I think he needs to get some starting time because I think you need him to be.
Use him as a young player going from the bench back to the starting lineup, then back to the bench whenever it is when James Harden or Joel Embiid comes back.
He needs to be able to know. He needs to have some starting time because if, knock on wood, if there is issues with Embiid's health, if you have any chance, you're going to need Maxey to be at his tip top.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think
I just think that the whole bench situation with him is a messed up to begin with. I mean, he shouldn't be coming off the bench to begin with. But if you're going to do it, you got to get consistent. We talk about it in all sports. Consistency in players' roles is important.
Oh yeah, I mean, we talk about it with baseball. I know you and I a lot with the relief pitchers, but having defined roles. But I think at the end of the day, I like what I saw from Maxey, and it'd be nice to see him kind of go on a little roll again, because then it gives you an added weapon that you haven't really been having.
Right. And getting him right does help, obviously. So we got Dallas tonight. Dallas is a really great team. We're in Dallas for a back-to-back. It's a 3. Dallas is actually favored tonight, 3.5 points. Joe Embiid is listed day to day, so that means they haven't decided what they're going to do with him tonight yet. Again, like I said, it's going to be a fun game. I would like to see Joel play just because he's battling Luka Doncic for the scoring title. It's literally 0.2 of a point separate Joel Embiid and Luka Doncic for the scoring title. And watch a little bit tonight's game, Jason, if you get a chance, because we always talk about the Nikolai Jokic and Embiid for MVP. The only person in the NBA this year that I'd be like, it's okay that he won the MVP and it wasn't Joel Embiid is Luka Doncic. Because for as much crap that Joel gets on not getting an MVP or he's not good enough, Luka's deserved to win an MVP by this point as well. You know what I mean? Luka is one of the best players in the NBA, and he carries that Mavericks team every year. Maxey must have to be able to play with Embiid at this. Yeah, I mean, if you missed the beginning of the show, we talked about that. We can't understand why he hasn't been able to figure out how to play with Joel. I'm just going to say it right now. So, James Harden, the rumors are rampant that he might go, back to Houston or whatever. And the Maxey must start and figure out with Joel. Makes me want to say this, Jason. So there is the rumor that maybe James Harden goes back to Houston. I don't buy the rumor. Unless we win an NBA title, there's no way James Harden's going to go back to Houston on a 19-win team and just waste away in Houston. I know he loves it. If he wins a title, yeah, maybe he'd want to go back and help his former team get back in the right way. But at this point in James Harden's career, he wants a title. But hypothetically speaking, Jason, I've got this crazy thought process here that you could flip this team really fast. Now, I don't know if I want Daryl Morey doing it, but James Harden goes back to Houston. Maybe you make out in the NBA, you don't let free agents just walk. You do a sign and trade thing so he gets more money. Then you get assets from Houston. If you can move on from James Harden in the offseason, Tobias Harris is entering the final year of his contract next year, which means it's a very tradable contract because it's an inspiring contract. We could potentially, in the offseason, if this has to get blown up this year, you fire Doc, maybe you fire Daryl Morey, you could conceivably see next year, going into next year, having 2 max slots reopen back up because you can easily move off of Tobias. You move James Harden to Houston in the sign and trade. You got room to add 2 new superstars to Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. Is it insane to think that literally this offseason we could flip this roster around? But the problem is then, do you trust Daryl Morey to do it? Because Daryl Morey is all about the splash move, the James Harden move, and not the let's build around the Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid pairing the right way.
So
I don't know who's available.
No, I like your hypotheticals, but I guess my question to you, not who is available, but who would you like to see the Sixers?
I have no idea. I would have before who?
Dame?
Oh, I would always want Dame. Yeah, you know me. Dude, I would trade the world for Dame. That's it. But I don't know who's actually available in that situation. You know what I mean? You have to find somebody that's available.
Who would fit with Embiid? Who would be a great?
I haven't even thought about this. I thought about it literally 30 minutes before the show. I have no information on how to make this.
I'm putting you on spot.
I know you are. But see, the problem is you don't have much to trade. So you need somebody that's a free agent because you could trade James Harden back to Houston. You might get a few. We don't have a draft pick that we could trade till 2029. So we don't have assets to trade. So you would have to first be able to find the assets from Houston by getting James Harden back there and whatever assets you get for Tobias Harris and then build around that. So I don't know, dude. I would love Lillard. I think Beal at this point, problem is Beal is not a point guard. He's more of a shooting guard. So you'd have Beal and Maxey both kind of playing the same type of role. I think Lillard would probably fit next to Maxey a little bit better. But Damian Lillard's a ball hog, kind of like James Harden to an extent. So maybe that would hurt Tyrese Maxey as well. So I don't know. I would love both those guys. But I don't know if either of them would be the perfect fit. See, the thing is, Jason, and this is where I go and say the whole Daryl Morey, I don't trust him. Because you got James Harden, and it was the right deal. You got James Harden here. I wouldn't do it over again. But on the flip side of the equation there, you could have gotten Tyler Halliburton and Harrison Barnes or Buddy Hield from Sacramento for James Harden. And look at what Halliburton is doing. He's flourishing now that he's out of Sacramento. Hell, Sacramento's flourishing now after they made their trades as well. They would have complemented. They were younger. They might not have had the experience that James Harden, but they would have complemented what we had a little bit better. But they wouldn't have been the flashy, special, big name like James Harden. And that's what Daryl Morey does. Daryl Morey's a lot like Dave Dombrowski with the Phillies. Makes splash moves. He doesn't do complimentary moves very well. And that's what this team needed. So I don't know. I don't know if Durant stays in Phoenix. I think he does. I think you're going to see him in Phoenix for at least 2 to 3 years. But yeah, who knows? Maybe. All right, Jason, I want to get back to the Eagles here. I want to talk Eagles. By the way, I think the Sixers win tonight. I think Joel Embiid plays tonight. I think the Sixers get the W, get 2 in a row tonight, because they're good. I know we're down on the Sixers today, but it's more because of the overall process, not the game last night or the losses earlier in the week. But anyway, Eagles, yesterday, tweet comes out, then gets deleted, which I don't know why people even delete their tweets when they're wrong, because screenshots in this world, no tweet is lost forever. Every tweet, somebody's got a screenshot of every dumb tweet there is out there. But Chauncey Gardner Johnson shares a picture of Jonathon Gannon and tweets out, "You ain't put us in a position to make plays," with an emoji next to it. Chauncey, you're a free agent. The Eagles want to pay you a boatload of money, and you're going to go out and put out a tweet like that. Look, I put out a tweet saying I didn't agree with it, Jason. And literally I have over 20 comments on this tweet, and I don't think there's one tweet or one response agreeing with me. Because everybody just keeps saying that Chauncey Gardner Johnson's speaking the truth. He stinks. Jonathon Gannon stinks, blah, blah, blah. It was Jonathon Gannon that screwed us, blah, 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 whatever. Look, Jonathon Gannon may or may not have cost us the Super Bowl. Sure. But do we need Chauncey Gardner Johnson? What's today's date? March 2nd? The Super Bowl was 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I've moved on. I don't want negative energy surrounding this team as we build it towards next year to trying to get back. We don't need drama. We went through drama with Carson Wentz, with Alshon Jeffries, with all that stuff. We don't need drama in our locker room. Now, hypothetically speaking, Chauncey Gardner Johnson is not a member of the Eagles right now. He's a free agent. But we all expect him to get a big contract. I think he's the first name to drop. I think he's the first deal that Howie Roseman gets done. But you've just created unnecessary drama. Now, most people will agree with you, but there was a maturity issue when we brought him here from New Orleans. People talked about him jawing, mouthing off, always being a chirpy guy, always speaking his mind, which is fine, but in the wrong times. We knew that. And he's 20, he'll be 25 by next year's season. This just shows that he's an immature player still. You don't need to say what everybody already knows because it can be bad. And then you instantly delete it, which means anybody that says he wasn't wrong to me, he knows he was wrong. That is why he deleted the tweet. So, Jason, is it a sign of immaturity that he made this tweet? Does it change your opinion on him? And was it wrong?
Well, first and foremost, it doesn't change my opinion of him because I think he is immature, and that's okay. I mean, so is a lot of players in the NFL.
Especially at 24 years old.
Yeah. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I'm on your side of the camp, so I'm not like the 20 people that came at you on Twitter. I do believe that he shouldn't have done it, but listen, it's over and done with. Mm-hmm. I will say there is something to be said about people that speak their mind. I mean, and I'm okay with people being honest, but I think maybe in another platform, like I think by tweeting that out, you're only feeding to the drama. And like I was saying earlier before the show, I don't agree with Jonathon Gannon running his mouth either. Like, Jonathon Gannon needs to shut up. He got a coaching job. He got what he wanted. He doesn't need to be. I know, like, I don't know if they have to answer questions, but like, if he's asked a question like that, he doesn't have to come out and say, "Oh, well, this is why we lost." Like, no, we don't want to hear that. Eagles fans don't want to hear that. Mm-hmm. So, if we're gonna criticize Chauncey, we have to criticize Gannon. Now, I agree.
But the thing is, Gannon's gone. Forward. I don't care. Everybody wanted Jonathon Gannon gone. He is gone. Move on.
I get it. I mean, listen, like I said, I don't think Gardner should have did it. Now, obviously, it's over and done with. He obviously knows that it was wrong because, as you said, he deleted it. He was probably told by his agent, like, that wasn't a smart move.
Well, I mean, you think if you're Howie Roseman and you've got to sign Chauncey. You got Chauncey Gardner Johnson, Marcus Epps, Reed Blankenship, James Bradbury. 4/6 of your main secondary are free agents, and everybody wants Chauncey Gardner Johnson back because he's young, he's talented. There's no questioning that. He's a flashy player. Does that change how you go into those contract negotiations with him? Be like, yo, Chauncey, you didn't show us that was an image. You might have been right, but that didn't show maturity and growth on your part. Could that be the thing that kind of, Howie Roseman's a shrewd. We all know he's a shrewd businessman. He's going to do whatever he can to nickel and dime every single player to an extent. Does that go to him and be like, yo, I don't know, instead of $12 million, we're going to go $10 million a year in your contract, which then causes maybe Chauncey to test free agency. Then he goes somewhere else, and then the dominoes start falling in a different way. So that immature tweet could have cost him, but also cost the Eagles having Chauncey Gardner long term. Do you think it plays a factor at all in the negotiations and the decision making on Howie Roseman's part?
I mean, I'd like to think that it won't, but you never know with these kind of situations. I mean, I don't think Howie Roseman would be too shy to bring it up behind closed doors, obviously.
That's why probably agent told him to delete the tweet.
Probably I don't think Howie's going to call him out publicly, but behind closed doors, I wouldn't be surprised if he says, or if he even already called him and said, I know, and I don't know if that would be tampering, quote unquote, if he did call him, but like, I'm sure he has his cell phone number.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let me just read some of these answers to my thing. We know he's speaking the truth. Gannon admitted it. He's saying what we all think. I shouldn't get high and mighty on him for feeling that way. I think all members of the defense felt. I want to stop on this one, actually. I think it just shows how all the members of the defense felt. Weren't rumors at the end of the season, at the end of the Super Bowl, and even after the game, talking about how everybody loved Jonathon Gannon on this defense? Javon Hargrave called, Jonathon Gannon to congratulate him on getting that coaching. Where's all this coming from that everybody on the team? The rumors during the season were that everybody loved Jonathon Gannon, that it might not have been working out the way we wanted as fans with blitzes and everything. But for the most part, when everything was going well and we were making our way to the Super Bowl, it seemed like everybody liked Jonathon Gannon inside the locker room there.
I'm with you, dude. Gannon's gone. Let's move on.
I'm reading more of these tweets. Gannon owed it to the city to at least talk to everybody first. That's fair. He's just saying what we all knew was true. Yeah, I get it. That's everybody's saying it. If he was, it would be Gannon. It would be drama if Gannon was still here. That's at least a fair point. But to me, I thought Gannon was loved by the players. Yeah, that's what I was saying there. Are you lying to yourself, Gannon? I'm being told I was lying to myself, and Gannon choked. Look, this is the problem with this tweet. All these comments are mistaking what I thought. Imagine how frustrating it must be to lose a Super Bowl because your coach did a bad job. Well, you know what, Mr. @Evan_K_1, maybe the players should have stepped up and done a better job in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, how about the players?
The players have to hold themselves accountable as well.
I mean, listen, I know we haven't talked about the Super Bowl much because we tried to move on from it, but at the end of the day, yes, Jonathon Gannon had a poor performance as a coach in that game.
Right.
But so did the players. I mean, Darius Slay might have had his worst game of the year in the Super Bowl. So
James Bradbury committed a penalty at the worst possible time.
Is he not exempt from that? Yeah, exactly. Bradbury. I mean, Bradbury, who admitted he made a penalty. Like, it was a penalty. I mean, listen, the players had to come to play too. So I don't want to hear that it was just Gannon. The Eagles lost that game as a team. So, yes, I agree. People are going to be pissed off, and everyone has it.
Yeah. I think it's more of Nick Sirianni has changed the culture in this organization and this locker room. And it's a team, it's a family. If you got this problem, Chauncey, keep it in-house. That's my thing. I don't like in-house problems getting broadcast to the public because that's when drama happens. That's when sides are picked. That's when, just hypothetically speaking, Javon Hargrave really did like Jonathon Gannon and Chauncey Gardner Johnson didn't. Now there's a divide. I mean, they're both free agents, but say that there's a chance that both come back. Well, now there's a divide in that locker room. You might miss out on the opportunity to bring one of them back because one doesn't like the other. I know it shouldn't go into it, but it does go into it. You don't need a divide. I just keep remembering the Alshon Jeffrey. Maybe it was him. Maybe it wasn't. Jacina, whatever her name was, Anderson. That whole leak thing from the locker room, that fractured the Eagles because there were leaks coming out of the locker room because people were talking bad about each other. This is not as egregious as that situation, but this is not what we want. This is not what Nick Sirianni has built. This year, outside of national media calling out Jalen Hurts saying he wasn't good enough, there was no drama with this Eagles team. Winning cures all drama normally, but there was no drama on this team. Even when the going got tough, everybody was on the same page with this team. And that's the thing. That's my only problem with it. If you got a problem with Gannon, bitch about it with your coach, your friends, and your teammates. Don't let it leave the locker room. Don't put it out on social media. Don't put it out to the public. Don't leak it to a reporter, whatever it may be. That's just my problem with it. You got the problem, keep it internal. Find a way to fix it. And like I said, and you said, he's not here anymore. So who cares? You're just starting to unnecessary trouble about a guy that's not even part of the organization anymore. And to me, that's the problem right there.
Spot on.
Just a waste. I just spent 15 minutes on a topic that we shouldn't have to have a topic about. Because, it's just, Yeah, it just frustrates me because I want it to be all about positivity and moving forward to 2023, so that we have another chance at another Super Bowl run. But unfortunately, there's a little bit of immaturity there. Look, again, like I said, I don't think it affects his free agent status per se. I still think he's the top target to bring back for the Eagles. I just think it puts in the back of Howie Roseman's mind, we got to at least think about this for a second. Instead of being, here's a blank check, sign it. It's, well, let's think about this for a second, because there is obviously a sign of maturity there. So that's that. Just my thoughts.
I like it.
I was waiting for you to respond.
I'm sorry, I had to mute.
I know, you're muting yourself for the cough and all. All right, so finally, the other day, we didn't get to talk about it yesterday, as I had Kylie from the Bell Smashers on. And again, shout out to my girl Kylie from the Bell Smashers pod. Great guest, great having her on talking Phillies yesterday. But because she was talking Phillies yesterday, we didn't really get to address finally on Tuesday. The Eagles announced their coordinators. Brian Johnson, worst kept secret in Philly, is the offensive coordinator officially now. And Sean, I don't know if you know how to say his name. Is it Desai or Desai, or how do you say his last name? You know? Desai? I don't know. I haven't heard anybody say it yet, so I don't know how to say it. Sean Desai. He was with the Bears and the Seahawks last year as the defensive coordinator. I want to get your thoughts on it. Obviously, we've talked about Brian Johnson before. I think it's the smartest hire that they could have made, since all reports say he's one of the hottest up-and-coming coaches in football. He might be another one of those guys who's only the offensive coordinator here for a year or two, because he is going to get a head coaching opportunity at some point. I think that's a really smart hire, obviously. Keeps the continuity. And I forget the guy's name, but they promoted the guy who was the assistant quarterback coach to the quarterback coach, because he's another guy that's fast rising, and he's also in that room with Jalen Hurts a lot. So you're keeping the continuity with Jalen Hurts in the offense, and the voices in the room with him. So the Brian Johnson move, obviously, Jason, smart, no questions asked. It was the right decision, right?
Yeah, it's a slam dunk. I agree. I mean, I see a lot of people, a lot of beat reporters, raving about Brian Johnson all season. Our buddy Chris Franklin's done a lot of, research on him, and he's just the guy that, as you said, he's a hot riser. He's gonna be a head coach someday in the near future. And obviously, the fact that he has that rapport with Jalen Hurts, I mean, you can't quantify the importance of that. So I think that's the slam dunk. I don't know much about the defensive coordinator. I don't know much.
So let's talk about Sean Desai or Desai or Desai or Desai or whatever it is. I'll learn his name when he gets his press conference and they say it, and I hear it on the air for the first time. But he is a Vic. If you're wanting the Jim Johnson blitz-heavy offense, Sean Desai is the complete opposite. Sean Desai is a Vic Fangio disciple. You didn't get Vic Fangio, so Vic Fangio said, well, go get my boy Sean Desai, and he's going to run the same type of scheme that I would. So if you think Jonathon Gannon did not blitz enough, played soft zone coverage too much, let me tell you something, guys. Sean Desai is going to take it up an even bigger notch. He blitzed, I think, last year, or when he was in Chicago, it was the lowest blitz percentage in the league. So you're not going to get anything different but a glorified higher version of what you got last year on this defense. But from my readings, my initial readings, and I've just read a little bit on him this week, he is a very smart in-game adjuster. So there was a game, I forget, I read an article, there was a game a couple years ago where he was in charge of the defensive schemes. I don't know if he was filling in as defensive coordinator or what. They had blitzed like 2% of the time in the first half. And then they adjusted because of the way the game flow was to 67% in the second half because he knew, and they came back and won that game. So there is the knowledge that he has the ability to make in-game adjustments, which has been the number one crux and criticism of Jonathon Gannon. Not the lack of blitzing. The mid-game adjustments is what his criticism was. So Sean Desai is known to make in-game adjustments. But, like I said, we are not getting the blitz-happy guy we wanted, Jason.
No, I mean, fans are going to be flipping out. I already see it. But what I did hear about him is he's extremely smart. And I heard that he's like a great leader.
Yes.
Which is something that I'm not saying that Gannon wasn't. but I never really looked at Gannon as being a leader. Like, obviously, Sirianni's a leader and he leads, the team mentality. But I think it's important to have a guy as your defensive coordinator that's going to kind of mold and kind of, I'm not saying criticize his players, but call them out when they're wrong and like show them what they did wrong and then fix it. And as you said, if he's a better adjuster, that in itself is going to be a win.
I mean, you look at he was the defense coordinator for the Bears, or the assistant defense coordinator for the Bears when Robert Quinn had his 18.5 sacks 2 years ago. Robert Quinn had his best season ever and got a big contract from working under Sean Desai. So,
I can't be mad at the Eagles because the way I look at this is we didn't like Nick Sirianni when they hired him. And so I have to kind of trust that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that nobody likes Sean Desai. I'm just trying to prepare people that everybody likes Sean Desai right now because he's not Jonathon Gannon. But they're not going to like his style once we see them get on the field in week 1.
No, but what I'm saying is I think people are going to be skeptical because they don't know the name. It's not a name notoriety guy.
I know people are on the fence here. Do you think it was a mistake not to bring in a veteran voice, somebody that formerly was a head coach? We talked about this a few weeks ago. Jim Schwartz, former head coach, was here on the staff as the defensive coordinator the year we won the Super Bowl. And instead of having all young guys, having that veteran presence to help Nick Sirianni, we talked about would that be the right option? You've got 2 young guys being promoted to this position for the first time. The defense coordinator, Nick Sirianni, just lets the defense coordinator. He's like the head coach of the defense. It's not like he answers, but he doesn't have to answer to Nick Sirianni. Have we made a mistake by not bringing in that veteran voice?
I mean, that's a good question. I wanted a veteran personally, but listen, like I said, I think I got to have faith in Howie Roseman and Jeff Lurie because they obviously do their homework a lot, and they did it with Nick Sirianni. They did it with Steichen. They did it with Gannon. I mean, listen, a lot of people were high on Gannon. I mean, obviously, he got a coaching job.
I mean, he was getting coaching job interviews last year when he had the 18th ranked defense, and that translates, the fact that Jonathon Gannon, all these guys everybody gets talked about their fast rising coaches in the NFL. We don't know who's going to be the right one or not. The Eagles also not fired, not kept, but extended and gave a raise to Michael Clay, the special teams coordinator, which everybody's like, what? I mean, and the reports when that news came out was that he is also on the short list of fast rising head coaching candidates in the NFL, which he had the 27th ranked special teams last year with the Eagles. Yet all reports across NFL circles is he's going to be a head coach someday. So I don't understand what makes people look at coaches or coordinators and assistants and be like, that guy might be a head coach, even though their team or their what they're leading sucks. I will say, I'm not sure if it's the only, but I'm sure there's not many. Now with Brian Johnson, Sean Desai, and Michael Clay, the Eagles are one of the only, if not the only, team that have all 3 African Americans as their coordinators on their team. So that's a very good progressive thing, helping get progress the future of this NFL.
Yeah, I think it's great. Like I said, I don't know much about the guy, but I'm going to err on the side of believing that this is the right decision. Maybe they bring in a veteran, like kind of like they did with Vic Fangio last year, like as a voice,
Consultant.
Consultant. Maybe that happens. Who knows? But I think the bottom line is I'm more concerned. If you're going to ask me my opinion, I'm more concerned about the players that we're going to lose because we're losing a lot of players on the defensive side of the ball. There's no way we're signing all of them with Jalen Hurts' contract coming and, other guys that we have to extend.
I think you just said something there that I think a lot of people misunderstand. Yes, Jalen Hurts is going to get a huge contract extension. It's going to happen this offseason, but it's not going to hit next year's cap or this year's cap. It's not going to hit. He's still under his rookie deal next year. So his $1 or $2 or whatever $1 million. Now, how he might structure the extension where the cap hit, some of it hits this year, but technically speaking, how he could push off all of the extension to 2024's cap. So there is a chance to sign these guys this year and still have an elite team this year. Now, it's kicking the tire or kicking the can down the road, whatever that saying is. It could be a backfire thing next year or 2 years from now, but it's not. Jalen Hurts' extension does not have to affect this year's free agents that we sign.
I agree. It doesn't necessarily affect it, but it still does because at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to sign everybody. We had so many guys on like 1-year deals, and it's like any kind of extensions are going to be, the money's going up. You know that they're not going to be able to sign all of them. So you have to sign the ones that you think are the most important. I mean, to me personally, I think Gardner Johnson's definitely, being that he's young, is probably your number one. I still think they should bring back Hargrave. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I think Hargrave showed me a lot, like, as far as being a leader on that defensive line. But I think the Eagles do have enough young guys that they can. I'm not saying that they're going to just jump in and be what Javon Hargrave was, but they have guys to replace him.
We'll try to get into more of these free agents and who they should bring back tomorrow on the show. I want to just spend a minute just sarcastically talking about the fact that Andrew Painter had his spring debut for the Phillies yesterday, and he gave up a run yesterday. Jason only struck out one hitter in 3 innings. Is Andrew Painter a bust?
I know it's either he's a Hall of Famer or he's a bust. It's funny, like how people, the bottom line is the guy's a stud. I already told you how I feel. I don't think he should start up here at, day one, but I do think he will be on the roster.
Would it be almost too perfect if he doesn't have a perfect spring? Like if he pitched good yesterday. I mean, some of his pitches. I mean, it wasn't on TV, so I didn't watch. I was just watching highlights. I mean, some of the movement on his pitches. I mean, it's insane. And he was hitting 98, 99 miles an hour in his first spring outing. I mean, lots of potential there. But is it almost good for the Phillies if Andrew Painter just has an okay, decent spring? You know what I mean? Because then you have the ability to say he's there. He's just not quite there. We're going to give him a little bit of reps in AAA and then bring him up in June or July. You know what I'm getting at there? I
think it's the perfect scenario. I don't want him to have a great spring and then have them bring him up because I know you and I have kind of sometimes we battle on these kind of things, but I do agree with you. Like, you don't want him, like, he's going to be on an innings restriction regardless. So if it's 150 innings, if you bring him up day one, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have to, sit him down. You're going to have to send him down, yada, yada, yada. If you wait till like June, then you got, 150 innings there. If he comes up and he really is the guy that he is, then you can just let him pitch. So I think you are better off letting him start at AAA and then bring him up.
Hey, Marcus, thanks for checking in, my man. We talked about this earlier in the show. Is Embiid back tonight? Probably. They haven't said. But then we did discuss, would it be just smart to just sit him again tonight? So he gets, you had the day off on Tuesday. He had Wednesday and Thursday off. Then you get a day off on Friday. And then so it's basically 4 straight days off. And then you go into Milwaukee with Joel Embiid on 4 days rest. He probably plays tonight. But there is a scenario where there's a smart argument to be made where you just give him 4 days off in a row. So, but to answer your question, he probably plays tonight. All right, I think that's all we got today, Jason. We got into the Phillies, we got into the Eagles, we got into the Sixers. Tomorrow, more Sixers. We'll see what happens with the Sixers tonight in Dallas. Thank you. I appreciate you tuning in. Stats are crazy with that. Tonight's win, I think the Sixers win tonight. I think look, we talked about earlier in the show, Marcus, the Sixers are a really good team. They lost 2 games in a row. We don't need to get too high or too low on this team during the winning streaks and the losing streaks. It's really going to come down to what happens in the playoffs, getting there healthy, getting there when, with Joel Embiid as fully healthy as possible. You're almost, to an extent, it's crazy to say this with 21 games left, Marcus, is that the Sixers are almost already locked into the 3 seed. There's almost no chance they catch the Celtics or the Bucks, and there's almost no chance the Cavs catch them. So they're pretty much locked. So the point of the rest of the regular season is getting healthy, staying healthy, and working on the rotations and the chemistry of this team. That's all. So when they lose, you can't freak out. When they win, you can't freak out. But you can still dissect what they're doing in between minutes 1 and 48 of the game. And that's really where we're at. Joe, let's go Fly. Did the Flyers win last night, Jason? I know they were up 2-1 at one point. I don't know. Let me check. I don't know. I don't even know what's going on with the Flyers. At some point, we're going to have to talk the Flyers. I just don't know how I do it or if I even want to do it.
They're an abomination. the organization.
I know you put out a fun tweet about them. They lost 3-2 against the Rangers last night. They've lost now 4 in a row. They've lost 8 of their last 9, 9 of their last 11. So yeah, they're an abomination. Yeah, I thought they were doing well there for a little bit. I guess that stopped. Losing 9 out of 11 is not good, is it?
This is the worst.
They are second to last in their division.
This is the worst era of Flyers hockey probably since before the 80s. Like before
third worst in they're third worst in the Eastern Conference. Near the bottom. I think they're bottom 8 in the league. Wow. The Flyers stink.
Yes.
Who? Yeah, I don't know. Lost in overtime. Yeah, don't know. Worst franchise. That's the key right there. The no direction. That's the key right there. You know, at least the Sixers have a direction. We don't agree with the direction, Joe, but at least they have a direction. You know what I mean? The Eagles, they have a direction. The Phillies, they have a direction. The Flyers, no clue. No clue. And I've lost all connection, personal connection to what was. I said it before on the show, Joe. People don't realize I've been to more Flyers games than Sixers and Eagles games combined in my life. Almost as many Phillies games as Flyers games. And I could care less. People call me like, yo, I got a free ticket to the game tonight. Nah, I don't want to go. That would never have happened in my life. Never. I have no physical connection to this team. I probably couldn't name more than 6 players on this team because until Chuck Fletcher's gone, want nothing to do with this team. Nothing. Yeah, us diehards. I got a customer, Joe, that comes into my pizza shop for 15 years now. They canceled their season tickets. They've been a season ticket holder for 30 years, 40 years. Canceled them because they want nothing to do with the team. Prices keep going up. Quality of the team and direction of the team keeps going down. All right, we spent way too much time talking Flyers. Here. I'll do it for you, Jason. There we go. What's up with the Flyers? There. I put it up for a second. That's all we need.
They suck.
They suck. That is the exact answer on them. All right, we're wrapping up Trending the AM right there on DSM Media. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, follow on all social media platforms. Drop your comments if you're watching on replay. I will go back and check them all. It says I got a new comment at the bottom of the screen. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you ruined the end. I was feeling so good at the end of the show, Joe, and you just ruined it. Bringing up the Flyers. Who brings up the Flyers? No, thank you. I'd rather talk Union or more golf. Arnold Palmer Invitational going on right now down in Orlando. We're going to wrap it up right there. Everybody have a great day. We'll be back tomorrow. Sixers recap. We'll dive into Eagles free agency and who they should or shouldn't go. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a great day. For Jason Voorhees, I am Phil Stiefel. Go Birds. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
And Philadelphia has it.